It's the first stage of the World War III.
Russian human rights activist and former world chess champion Garry Kasparov on Thursday urged world powers to adopt a harsher military and economic strategy against Russian President Vladimir Putin for his invasion of Ukraine, calling it nothing short of the first stage of World War III.
It's a genocide live. It's the first time in our history, in human history, we're watching war crimes on the industrial scale committed by Putin's criminal regime. It's the first stage of the World War III, and it's not war of our choosing.
In an interview with Reuters, Kasparov called on Western countries to recall their ambassadors from Moscow, eject Russia from the global police agency Interpol, and impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine.
Russia should be thrown back into the Stone Age to make sure that oil and gas industry and any other sensitive industries that are vital for survival of Putin regime cannot function without Western technological support.
Kasparov, who spoke to Reuters from New York on Thursday, played an active role in the anti-Kremlin opposition protest movement when he lived in Moscow, and in the years since has been an outspoken Putin critic. He told Reuters there could be no peace in the region until Putin is removed from power, and took aim at U.S. President Joe Biden for not taking more aggressive action against the Russian leader earlier.
I hope that Americans will revise their strategy and will show strength. Never in history dictator was stopped by restraint. Dictator already started aggressive war, and he has committed war crimes beyond imagination.
Sanctions so far imposed by the U.S. and other NATO countries have isolated Russia to an unprecedented extent for an economy of such size. Hundreds of Russian soldiers and Ukrainian civilians have been killed since Russian troops crossed the border on February 24th, and more than 1 million refugees have fled.
On the contrary, we did not get what we planned because nothing is left.
Mr. Hankinson, this jury has found you not guilty. This court therefore finds that you are not guilty of these charges. You are free to go and your bond will be released.
A Kentucky jury on Thursday acquitted a former detective of endangering neighbors of Breonna Taylor during a botched nighttime raid that killed Taylor in her home, clearing law enforcement of all criminal liability in a case that rocked the United States back in 2020. Detective Brett Hankison's stray bullets hit a neighboring apartment in the city of Louisville during the execution of a no-knock search warrant. He was the only officer charged in the case. The Jefferson County Circuit Court jury deliberated for about 3 hours after hearing closing arguments on Thursday at the conclusion of a 1-week trial. The death of Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency medical technician who was unarmed at the time of her death, was one in a trio of cases that fueled a summer of protests against racial injustice and police violence 2 years ago, when the country was reeling from the still new coronavirus pandemic. The other cases resulted in guilty verdicts for the murders of 2 black men in 2020, George Floyd of Minneapolis and Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick, Georgia. In Taylor's death, a grand jury cleared the 2 white officers who shot her, but charged Hankison for endangering neighbors in the adjacent apartment. Taylor's family in 2020 won a $12 million wrongful death settlement from the city of Louisville.
1 million people have fled Ukraine since the start of the conflict. Among them was Chicago influencer Olga Soy.
This seems surreal. This is something out of a history book ages ago.
Soy is using her platform to shed light on the hardships Ukrainians face. She was with her mother when air raid sirens sounded in Kiev on February 24th.
I guess this is a bomb shelter.
They rushed down to a school's basement for shelter.
It's crazy how your body's like in constant state of fear and in constant state of like fight or flight mode, you know?
Soy and her mother made their way to Poland. She says her journey was hard, but must have seemed impossible for others.
So this is a place where they're giving out food and provision, I guess. Let's see what's inside.
Like I couldn't take my shoes off because my feet were so swollen. And I'm like, wow, this was hard for us. I can't imagine somebody traveling with children.
Soy plans on catching a flight to Chicago, where she hopes to seek asylum for her mother. But she says she feels guilt for the people left behind.
The entire country is going through this. Like nobody's safe.
Wall Street ended lower on Thursday, with growth stocks including Tesla and Amazon weighing most on the S&P 500, as Russia's invasion of Ukraine, now a week in, kept investors on edge. The Dow finished more than 0.25% lower, and the S&P 500 closed down 0.5%, while the Nasdaq ended down more than 1.5%. Palumbo Wealth Management's chief investment officer, Philip Palumbo, said the soaring price of oil caused by the crisis in Ukraine was stoking fears that the Federal Reserve could raise interest rates faster and higher than expected.
The number one thing investors have to know is, as it relates to the stock market, is just wherever the price of oil is going to go is where the market's going to go. Oil is higher today, markets are down today. And what that means is, as the price of oil continues to climb, Fed Powell is going to have to move a lot faster than he's talking about. And if the Fed has to move faster, that means interest rates have to go higher. If interest rates have to go higher, it puts pressures on markets. And that's why the market is reacting the way it is.
Wall Street surged in previous sessions after Fed Chair Jerome Powell said he would back a quarter-point rate increase at the mid-March meeting, easing some concerns of a more aggressive rate hike. On the earnings front, shares of Kroger soared more than 11.5% after the grocer forecast annual same-store sales and profit above market expectations, encouraged by strong demand for its pickup and delivery services. And American Eagle Outfitters slid more than 9% after the apparel chain forecast a decline in earnings for the first half of 2022.